For our next segment, we turn it over to Bill Velasco, who will shed light on how bad boxing has gotten in recent weeks.
Thanks, Nisi and Dennis. You know, I'm a little worried about boxing. I don't recognize it anymore. This is not the boxing that I grew up on, I studied on, I read about. It's a completely different animal. Let's look back at some of the history of boxing and how it has evolved to what is supposed to be the safer, more professional sport that it was meant to be. Back in the day when boxing first started in the bare knuckles era, prior to that, it was a Roman way of torturing Christians that they had captured. You would fight each other with leather or metal gloves that had spikes and even poison on them, and you would only survive one fight. Then later on, with the rules of the Marquis of Queensberry, you had certain specifications. You had rounds, but then originally the first round would only end when somebody fell down or got knocked down. So sometimes one round could last an hour. There were no limits on the numbers of rounds. There were some fights that went for 70 rounds. And needless to say, the boxers there no longer survived. After that, they added weight division. So imagine, prior to that, you're fighting somebody who's 60, 70, 80 pounds heavier than you, and it was considered equal. Then there were 7 original weight divisions, which is during the time of the boxers that we recognized, Muhammad Ali, Sonny Liston, all these great names, particularly in the heavyweight division. Then they started adding more weight classes. There's now very little separation between the weights, a couple of pounds, one big meal. So gradually, more and more champions decided to have more and more championships. Then the number of boxing organizations multiplied. Back in the day, it was only the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF. The WBC was based in Mexico, WBA was based in the US, and IBF used to be based in Korea. Now there's an explosion of alphabet soup organizations, some of whom we barely even recognize, and some only a few years old. Then more and more, the rules became diluted and became corrupted, just to accommodate more and more fighters. The fighters became more important than the fights. The names became more important than the titles. In fact, even just 30 years ago, fights were still 15 rounds long until Duk Kim died after fighting Ray Boom Boom Mancini in what was really a lopsided fight, but he gave his all. His mother committed suicide after that, and the referee also decided that life was no longer worth living. After that, the WBC initiated the move to shorten fights to 12 rounds. But still, things kept on getting worse and worse for boxing. Then more and more celebrities started getting into boxing, and it became more of a show. Ali was fighting a real wrestler when he fought Antonio Inoki back in the early 70s. But of course, the rules were separate. Inoki could not really throw Ali down, and Ali could only use his gloves to hit Inoki, who spent most of the time on the canvas. What happened was it became a farce, and Ali just complained that he had bruises on his legs. But now, all the old rules are being thrown out the window. Triller promoted the fight between Vitor Belfort and Oscar De La Hoya, and all of a sudden, when De La Hoya came down with COVID, the weight didn't matter anymore. Evander Holyfield, a legitimate heavyweight who had last fought at the lower class, a lower weight division when he was an amateur, suddenly steps in what was supposed to be a light heavyweight fight. Needless to say, we all know what happened there. But it becomes encouraging to break the rules. It was even advertised as a legitimate sanctioned fight. Then, lo and behold, it was just an exhibition. How much worse is it going to get for boxing? Well, let me give you a hint. One championship is going to have a mixed rules fight. So MMA versus Thai boxing. The rules are going to be a compromised set of rules. Hopefully, this will be fair to both fighters who come from different disciplines. Not like when Floyd Mayweather Jr. fought in Japan against a very young, accomplished kickboxer who was not allowed to kick during the fight. I just don't know how bad things will get for boxing. But right now, I can tell you a lot of us who grew up on the sport, who are purists, don't like where it's heading.